So now that I'm going to start making assets, just ignoring everything else that I've done before, the first thing that I'm going to do is work on the nature ones. I wanted to work on the nature ones as I find that I actually really struggle with trees. I don't know why, but it's something that I've always been a bit worried about, especially when it comes to drawing. So I thought if I start with what I perceive as one of the hardest tasks, then at least I can go from there. And it can also give me a sense of the art style that I'm going for. So the first thing that I did was look up as many images as possible that I could get as a reference. Now from this I learned a few different things that will help me create my assets. So the first is that it doesn't matter what angle you draw trees on, as obviously with a round trunk it doesn't actually affect it at all. So I can place it literally anywhere in my world and it will look like it's meant to be there, which is great, and it means that will save me a lot of time, to be honest. So I was just looking at random images trying to find like at least a basis of what sort of shapes to put and like how I would build these trees, trying to find them in the most simplistic form. That way I could then expand on it and try and get my style from it. So I looked at as many different things as I could, trying to compile some images together that I could personally work with and the sort of at least basic style that I'm going for. With my older assets I really hated the square, cube trees. I think that they looked god awful, and that's just not the art style I was aiming for, as I find it makes it look far too unrealistic, where at least I'm going for semi-realism. So I just carried on looking basically, trying to find as many different things as possible. And then once I'd got an idea, I could then start drawing up ideas in my sketchbook, which you can see in my nature sketchbook. It just gave me a rough idea about how I could draw things. But once I'd got my trees down, I then looked onto bushes, which are basically the same as trees. I don't need to worry about what angle I draw them on, as they all follow a very similar style, and I'm not really sure what sort of shape I'm going for. I'm just getting basic ideas of what other people had done, and like if they'd put flowers or define the leaves or anything, so I know what I should do on mine. At the moment I'm aiming for a very flat style, I think. I don't really want a lot of textures. I want everything to look really plasticky, as if it was almost a actual 3D model of a city, as in one that you would find in an architectural business. So yeah, I was just looking up different styles, different shapes, getting a real feel of what I could actually do for myself. Once I'd compiled what I needed, and when I say compile I mean as if I got just as many images that I could find online to help me reference. I didn't actually put them anywhere. It's just something that I could keep going back to. Just every time that I needed some help with something, I could go back and try and find an image that would just help me be a reference. So the first thing that I did was just try and draw an isometric tree. Had no real aims, no real art style or anything. I just wanted to see what I could do. At first I was going for a very, very, very basic flat shape, which I have to admit I absolutely hate this. I think it looks god awful. It ended up just looking like a lollipop stick, so I didn't really want to use it. And especially like with the leaf texture and stuff, it just did not work for me. So I tried again. I got an image off of the internet just as a basis, just so I could see what sort of shapes and stuff. My method of working is probably very weird, but I like to find an image that I can use as a reference, trace it, and then once I've got the basic shape down and I know how things flow on screen instead of on paper at this point, but once I know how like things feel and what sort of shapes I should be drawing, it's then easier for me to take that forward and then turn it into something of my own and to get my own art style from it. So as an example for this one, I got a very, very, very basic, but in the shape and style that I wanted, tree, and then traced around it, coloured it so I could get a feel of how I wanted each colour to be, what sort of colours I'm looking at working with as part of a palette. And it just allows me to get a sense of what I'm doing. So as you can see here, on the right is my reference image and on the left is my image, and obviously as you can see it follows the very basic shape and the gradient. Now this gave me the idea of how I'm going to do the rest of my assets, and I really like the idea of working in block gradients. So after I'd got my image and I had drawn it, I then worked out the very basic shapes, and by that I mean literally what it's made up of in terms of circles, rectangles, everything. This allowed me then to get a basis of how I'm going to draw all of my nature assets, as then in my sketchbook I could work in terms of just circles and squares and see until like I had the layout and the idea that I wanted. So yeah, as you can see on this one, it's made up of 3 little circles and then 1 rectangle for the trunk. And then this could then be transferred to everything else, and it meant that now I have a very simple base to work off of and create my own art style from it. Once I had like done this one, I could then take it and make my own. So as you can see from this example here, this was the first tree that I did, and I based it off of one of my sketchbook sketches, which, as you can see, I did follow my rules and just do very basic shapes. From here I could then colour, draw, etc, etc. As I'm drawing, I like to work in stages, so I will do a very basic red outline that will give me the idea of like a very rough sketch of how it's going to look. Then go over it in black, and then I use the pen tool to draw very smooth lines to actually get the final product. So I did the same thing for 4 different trees, and then started on the bush asset, which will just go down the middle of the road and create a sort of barrier. So for this one it was very much the same process, and I tried to follow the style of my trees, use the same sort of like head that I used for the trees as my bush. So I just did the same as before, got a sketchbook sketch that I had done, and then drew it over the top of it, and then just added each individual part that I could. I tried to do different variations of flowers, that way it's not very blocky and it will look a bit different when it's actually in my game world. Give a little bit of variation and won't like bore the eyes essentially. Yeah, I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think that they look really good, and I think I've developed an art style just from doing these that will actually work really nicely in my game. It's not flat, it's not over the top, it's very cutesy, and a lot of people say it looks like ice cream, but I kind of like that. So yeah, I'm ready to move on to the